welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to try something new. I wanted to start a series about Backseat Adventures, meaning point and click adventures that didn't get the spotlight and were overshadowed by the likes from Sierra and LucasArts. This doesn't mean that these games are great, neither does it mean that they're extremely obscure, it's just that those are games that are not talked as much about. So without further ado, let's get to our first 3 games.
Hey Butthead, what is this? Just wait, something cool's gonna happen.
Now I'm unapologetically a huge fan of Beavis and Butthead. Not so much of the TV series necessarily, but much more about the movies, and I think especially the new ones are criminally underappreciated. So when I tell you that I love MTV's Beavis and Butthead in Virtual Stupidity, consider that if you're not a fan of the show, you will probably not appreciate this game as much as I do. That's not because it's not a great game, because it is, but because there's just a whole lot of Beavis and Butthead in this game, and well, if you don't like these guys, you're not going to have a good time with them.
Check it out, Butthead. This is my wood.
No way. That's like twice as much big as it is, or something. Let me show you.
The characters, humor and locations have been beautifully translated into this game. You get tons of snarky comments from the two douchebags, quite a few funny cutscenes and so many animations. It's really astonishing how much production value went into this game. I also especially like that you can sit down on your couch to get these movie clips from the TV show and the music videos. That's just such a nice touch and a good use of the CD-ROM media.
What? What the hell was that?
What the hell is this?
I think this is Primus.
I was sitting in front of my computer with a big grin the whole time. And amazingly enough, there's an actually really good adventure game hidden beneath all that fart jokes. You don't have any dead ends or cheap death, and surprisingly the game is also very light on moon logic. Generally I would say it's even on the easier side, and I was able to play through the whole thing without having to look at a walkthrough once. If I have one nitpick, or let's make this 2, it's the progression. Sometimes when you talk to a character and that unlocks a completely different character on a different screen that is completely unrelated, so you have to walk around the locations and discover that something has changed. But as there aren't many locations anyway, that is not a biggie. And on the other side there was this one thing that got me really riled up. There's this fountain where you can drink from and have this funny animation, and you think, well, that's about it. But if you look at the fountain, Beavis will tell you that there's a gum stuck to it, and then there is a new hotspot that you can't see in the game that's somewhere around the fountain that you have to click to get that gum. And that took me like forever and was really annoying for me. Other than that, I can just wholeheartedly recommend this game for anyone who can at least tolerate the two dimwits. It's a really fun experience that makes you feel a lot younger when you play it. Or older, it depends. It's rare that licensed games, especially in the comedic genre, are really true to their source material, and the writing in this one is excellent. And a small tip, if you're playing it in ScumVM, you can open the save game menu by pressing Ctrl F5 instead of F5. That took me a while when I thought there was only one save slot. Oh, and I completely forgot to mention that there are also mini-games. It's a bit weird, there are multiple of them, but you only need to complete the first one to proceed the story. The other ones are completely optional, but they're a nice little funny diversion.
Dead girl found on MTV!
Sherlock Holmes in the Case of the Rose Tattoo is a very different game. An extremely slow-paced detective adventure game with digitized actors playing in front of pre-rendered backgrounds. The game features a very long and intriguing storyline with quite a few plot twists and well-written characters and dialogue all around. Most of the puzzles make sense and aren't too difficult, but there is one exception. It's the lab table where you have to analyze stuff. First I thought this works the same way like in Freddy Farkas, so it's a copy protection and you have to look it up in the manual, but I own the manual and there was not much in there, so you really have to figure it out yourself, and it's mostly a lot of trial and error, or maybe if you're a chemist then you can figure it out faster, I don't know. The background graphics are very detailed and often nicely animated, and if you know me, I'm a sucker for digitized characters in games, so I also love the look of Police Quest 4 for example, or the Riddle of Master Lou. And I know that's not many people's cup of tea nowadays, but that's just me. It gives me this feeling of watching a theater play or something, I don't know. My main gripe with the game would be the walking animation. It's so slow, it really takes forever to get anywhere. And with getting older, I'm more and more allergic to time waste in games. But if you're not in a hurry, you have a very nice adventure game here. I especially liked how they depicted old London as a location with a lot of character. The game really takes you back to those times. So maybe if your everyday life is very stressful and you're looking for something to forcefully slow you down, this is a great experience. And I don't think you will regret uncovering the mystery.
It's Wayne's World, party time, excellent! Alright, excellent!
We're not mental or anything, so don't be afraid. My name is Wayne, and this is Garth.
Now what do we have here? Another cheesy 90s licensed comedy adventure. Could you have guessed, I love the Wayne's World movies as well. So I was quite excited when I found out that there was a point-and-click adventure game for DOS that I had never heard about before. I knew that the video game platformers were infamous for the crappy quality, but well, maybe the DOS game fared a little better. And spoiler alert, it did, but not by much. And unfortunately it fails in the most important category, the humor and writing. It's just not as witty as the original movies, not even close. I think the story and premise of the game is fine. You're organizing a pizzathon and you have to find people to help, you need advertisement and of course a place where you can bake and serve the pizza. But boy oh boy do some puzzles not make any sense, and the confusing map with its many locations that are unlocked right from the start doesn't help either. I really want to love the game, because I think the graphics are quite charming. There's some nice ideas for the locations and it really feels like you are on a Wayne's World adventure, at least visually. But then you get one of the most frustrating mazes in adventure games ever, and to make things even worse, they decided to put a time limit in the game. Yes, if you're not fast enough, you will get in game over. Oh, and the whole game only has one background song that gets annoying very fast. So if you really want to play the game, use a walkthrough, it makes the game just so much more bearable, and you might actually have a half decent time with it. Party time, this ain't.
Sometime later.
Check it out! That's a pumpkin that I planted! Boy, oh boy, this'll make a great jack-o'-lantern!
Yeah, a surmy fart sure packs a punch.
The perfect camouflage.
Nice costume, short stuff.
Chewy Escape from F5 is a classic point-and-click adventure, developed by the German company Playbyte and released in 1995. Most notable to me were the high production values. There are a lot of cutscenes, very nice hand-drawn pixel art graphics and a complete voiceover. You play as Chewy, the little purple alien guy who is looking for his partner that crashed on planet Earth after a mission went wrong. The first part of the game sees you in the Borg prison, evil, slimy, stupid aliens that have caught you on your mission, and you have to escape in order to find your partner. You do succeed to get to planet Earth, but unfortunately you also crash your own spaceship and need to hide from the humans to avoid a panic and too much attention. Tonally, the game is quite weird. It seems to be made to appeal to kids because, well, you have this quirky Saturday morning cartoon humor, but then you also have more mature themes and also a bit of a sexual undertone.
What kind of job is that?
A position as a secretary.
What are the requirements?
I can see that you meet the most important requirements.
Then again, it's a game from the 90s, so I guess being a bit edgy and horny is not that much out of the ordinary. It actually kinda reminded me of the Adventures of Willy Beamish that has the same conflicting tones in some parts of the game. Regarding the puzzles, it starts out very easy. That's why I also had the first impression it might be targeted to a younger audience. But after you've managed to escape the prison and the whole world opens up a bit, it gets a bit more complicated and there are some moon logic puzzles in there for sure. But those are not the worst offenders, and at least there are no dead ends or cheap death. The controls are a bit annoying, unfortunately. You have to hold the right mouse button and then move your mouse to the right or to the left to select the action, instead of just having a mouse cursor to do that, but you get used to that after a while. The bigger issues I had were technical. There were a lot of dialogue errors and animations that didn't play correctly, and I also had a few crashes and freezes. I don't know if that's an issue with the Scum VM version or also with the original game. It doesn't happen too often, but you should save your games regularly just in case. I felt that the first part where you have to escape the prison was a bit boring visually and from the actions, but if you get to the later part, it definitely picks up in pace. Overall, I think it's a neat game. Maybe use a walkthrough to avoid the moon logic puzzles, maybe just try yourself. The humor is a bit hit and miss, still I think it's worth your time. The next game I wanted to talk about is Noctropolis from 1994, developed by Flashpoint Productions. This game always intrigued me because it has this crazy and very unique superhero world that comes from a comic and that the protagonist gets teleported into. The story doesn't make much sense and seems like just an excuse for raunchy FMV and crazy visuals, but that's an excuse as good as any if you ask me. The writing is all over the place, over the top, overly dramatic and just very enjoyable. And the actors clearly had fun performing in their roles. As for the gameplay, well, it's not great. Many puzzles make just as much sense as the overall storyline, and you can easily die on many occasions. You will also get in a few dead men walking and dead end situations there, but I heard that the remaster from Night Dive Studios that released 2015 has toned those down somewhat. The controls are also a bit weird. You have this menu where you select an action and then you select the object that you want to perform the action on, but for the inventory it's a bit different. You just select an item, and if you can use this item on the current screen, it will automatically select with what it will use the item. So that makes things a bit easier because, well, you don't have so many combinations, but with the very convoluted puzzles this doesn't help too much, unfortunately. But if you're looking for a unique, very 90s experience, this game is one of a kind. So I still recommend playing it, but probably with a walkthrough or lots and lots of patience. Want to see more retro gaming videos? Then check out my channel or subscribe to it if you don't want to miss out when new ones get released. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you!
I'm your host for another phantasmic round of Spank the Virgin. That's right, lucky game player. You get to get in that bed and slap the bum of several unspoiled beauties. All of them personally inspected by me, your host, Ralph the Wonderlamb. So adjust your joystick and grab your mouse. It's time to Spank the Virgin.
golly.
Ow!
Oh, my.
Yes!
Naughty little bum.
Ow!
How'd you do?
More!
Yeah, another horny game? I wonder what my subconscious is trying to tell me here, but don't worry, in general Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail is rather tame. I argued with myself if this really qualifies as a point-and-click game or if it's more of a hidden object game, but as you do have some kind of inventory and you do travel different places with an overarching narrative, I'd say it made the cut. Recommending this game is really simple. If you're a fan of the movie, then this game is probably for you, especially if you want to see more of it and interact with it in some silly ways. But be warned, there is not much more material in there than you already know from the movies, it's more like a remix. You know what you're getting yourself into when you find out that you can just go back on the first screen and grab the Holy Grail from the title screen and just win the game. That's about as random and bizarre as the gameplay gets, which is sometimes a detriment because a few things are a bit hard to find out what the game expects you to do, but in general the game is rather easy and most quote-unquote puzzles can be solved by just randomly clicking on the images and see what happens. The good thing is that even if you click on wrong parts of the image, you always get some funny animation or a joke, so it's really enjoyable to discover everything that there's to find. Generally the game is separated in a few different scenes that all correlate to scenes from the actual movie. You always need to find a hidden coconut, and if you do so you can proceed to the next scene. There are also quite a lot more items besides the coconuts, and some of them are needed in the end, but you can always go back to previous scenes if you have missed one. So it's really easy to unlock all scenes up until the end, and you can experience about 90% of the game even without solving the more intricate puzzles, but if you really want to finish the game then you have to go the whole mile. Sprinkled in between the scenes are optional minigames, which oftentimes are extremely simplistic but funny nonetheless because of the theming with the Holy Grail movie. The game was released in 1996 both for Windows 3.1 and Windows 95. Not sure if there are any difference, I played the Windows 3.1 version because, well, there are just so few games for that platform that I always enjoyed going back to it. I've watched the movie probably about 10 times, but this game still managed to get a few giggles out of me. So don't miss out, it's not very long anyway.
The name's Marlowe, Philip Marlowe. I'm a licensed private investigator. You don't get rich in this racket. Sometimes you get beaten up or shot at or tossed in the jailhouse. Once in a while you get dead. Every other month you decide to give it up for some sensible occupation. Then the door buzzer rings and there stands a new face with a new problem and a small piece of money. Come in, Trouble. What can I do for you?
If you're into detective noir stories, Private Eye might just be the game you were looking for. The game is based on the works of the writer Raymond Chandler, where you control the famous Private Eye Philip Marlowe. So get ready for some sarcasm and witty dialogue. When the game was first released, it was reviewed pretty badly, with magazines criticizing the lack of interactivity of the game because they expected something more akin to the classic point-and-click adventures with inventory puzzles and the like, but this game is more like an interactive movie, you could say.
How did she know I was a detective? I could reach for my notebook and ask her, or I could put on my hat and leave, but make one thing clear before I left. You'd get a receipt. Who told you I was a gumshoe?
It must have been the smell.
I'm beginning to think you write your own dialogue.
Personally, I really liked the experience. The story got me hooked right from the start and I was always eager to find out how it would continue. I don't want to spoil the story here, it's nothing outrageous, but you've got a nice few plot twists and a whole cast of awful characters. Besides the few multiple choice options you have that change the outcome of the story, you also do have a few puzzles and decisions to make on the way. There's this mechanic where you can decide to take evidence from a crime scene or leave it for the police, and if you don't leave a crime scene fast enough and you get caught with the evidence, it's a game over.
I could take it, or I could leave it for the cops. rather the cops find it.
Not all evidence is necessary to get behind who committed the murder, so you should really try to focus on the main important ones that give you actual new information. I don't think you will actually fail the game if you miss any evidence, but you'll get worse outcomes in the end, which can range from getting shot to losing your license or to get the wrong people behind bars. All in all, it's a nice short experience. I've played through the whole thing I think in about 2 hours, so the game definitely never overstates its welcome. I also enjoyed the presentation of the game. You have this typical jazzy music that you would expect from the genre, and all the hand-drawn animations are really nice, even though some cutscenes have very low frame rates, probably due to the game coming on only a single disc. The game runs under Windows 3.1, Windows 95, and you can also just play it from ScumVM. So if you're looking for a bit more chill experience and enjoy the setting, I would say give it a go. It's really a nice game.
Mr. Marlowe?
Well, now that you mention it...
I don't think I'd care to employ a detective who uses liquor in any form. I don't even approve of tobacco.
Would it be all right if I peeled an orange?
You might at least talk like a gentleman.
Anybody ever tell you you're a cute little trick?
I should hope not.
So I'm not so sure about this one. Would you consider this a backseat adventure? Certainly I didn't hear about it in the time back then, but the game seems to have been very successful and spawned a sequel and several spin-offs, so I'm not quite sure if only I missed out on it or if it's actually a bit more obscure. Anyway, Three Skulls of the Toltecs is a western adventure starring the cowboy Fenimore Fillmore, who embarks on a quest to find the titular skulls, which are part of a legendary Toltec treasure. The first thing that came into my mind when I played this game was the comparison to the Sierra Western adventure game Freddy Farkas. On the surface, those two games are very similar. They both feature the western setting, they are both comedic, and both games also are presented in a cartoon art style. To keep things brief, I prefer Freddy Farkas definitely over this game, mostly because Elof's writing in Freddy Farkas is just a lot funnier in my opinion. And I also really enjoyed the quaint atmosphere and the quirky characters of Freddy Farkas more, and Fenimore Fillmore never really clicked with me as a character. But to be honest, that's very subjective and I think other people will disagree with that, just like with my preference of the pixel art of Freddy Farkas over the high-res cartoon animations of the Three Skull game. A specific nitpick I got with those is the color palette. The whole game is drenched in these yellow and orange colors, and oftentimes it doesn't look very appealing to me. Now obviously this doesn't mean that the game is bad. I mean, it's a harsh comparison. Freddy Farkas is one of my all-time favorite point-and-click adventure games, so how does the game stand on its own? It's enjoyable, I would say. Nothing out of the ordinary, it's your typical point-and-click adventure affair, and I didn't run into any dead ends or overly unfair situations in the game. The variety of locations and characters in this game is quite impressive, though sometimes maybe a bit overwhelming. So my main gripe with the puzzle design would be that oftentimes you really don't know what you are doing, you don't have a specific goal you work towards, but you're just picking up everything, trying to combine everything with everything else and see what ends up working. Oh, and I should also probably mention that the main character walks at a snail's pace and the pathfinding sometimes is also quite irritating, making Fillmore run over the whole screen instead of a straight line. Now maybe to put things a bit into perspective, the game has received a 4K remaster on Steam and that sits at very positive reviews, and it spawned a very successful 3D sequel called The Westerner, which leads me to believe that I might be a bit biased towards the title. So if this game sounds like something you might enjoy, you probably want to take a second look at it. I'm in a bit of a pickle here. I thought the first Dynamics adventure that was published by Sierra was The Adventures of Billy Beamish, but it turned out Heart of China was also already published by Sierra. So in the beginning of the video I said I would not talk about LucasArts or Sierra here, but well, call me a liar, I'm still going to talk about this game. I'll start with the things that I liked about the game and leave the criticism for the end. First and foremost, I really enjoyed the setting. It felt very exotic, taking place all over the Orient. Yes, you will also encounter a lot of cliches and racial stereotypes, but I will ignore that for now and continue with the positives. I think I've mentioned that in about almost every point-and-click adventure video I've done so far. I really dig digitized graphics. Having these low-res, low-color photographs in a game is just very nostalgic to me, and it always invokes a bit of a cheesy and dated atmosphere that I really enjoy. And the quality and sheer amount of photos you have in this game is quite astonishing, especially if you consider that this game has already been released in '91, so even before the first Mortal Kombat game released, which kicked off the whole craze. If it wasn't already apparent from the graphics that this game doesn't take itself too seriously, it will definitely become from the dialogue. The main protagonist is a real jerk, forcing you to constantly choose the least offensive answer that he can give in a dialogue to try to not make too much of a mess in the conversation. Imagine Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom with a bad case of diarrhea. The game also features a few minigames, with one having you control a tank in a first-person view presented in full polygonal 3D graphics, quite impressive for the time. Add to that an orchestral MT32 soundtrack with many memorable tunes and you've got yourself a very atmospheric point-and-click adventure. When we get to the gameplay side of things, we might very well start with a criticism here. It's rough. You will constantly die, and on more than one occasion you will find yourself in a situation that you can't escape because you've missed an item from 30 minutes ago or so. You will also only get 20 save slots, which I ran out quite quickly. In addition, you have several time limited situations, but to be honest, those didn't feel so bad because you were very aware that you had a time limit at that point and it was generous enough that you could succeed if you knew what you were doing. I mean, the puzzles were actually on the easier side and most of them made a lot of sense, no annoying moon logic here, but going back and forth between save games really destroyed the immersion at some points for me. The controls and inventory management is also a bit confusing, though that's just a minor inconvenience. So overall you get the typical Sierra adventure experience from the time back then, a truckload of charm that's unfortunately not matched by its gameplay. Still, I don't regret giving the game a try, and maybe if you're like me and a sucker for these kind of games, you take a walkthrough and play through it at least once. So this concludes the first season of the Backseat Adventure games. I hope you enjoyed exploring these games as much as I did and gave some of them a try for yourself. If you have any recommendations for the next season, please leave them in the comments below. And with that, see ya!